Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Focus on Liberia. My name is Leo Likpele Mupoli Johnson, and I'm going to be sitting in today for Mr. Dennis Jai. Mr. Dennis Jai is not feeling too well, so I will be sitting in for him today. And I'm on today with Dr. Joel King, and we're going to be looking at governance and leadership. But today we'll be looking at it from the angle of the executive branch of government. You can say the presidential as well for our Liberian people. So before I go any further, I will give Dr. King the opportunity to just introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his background.
Yes. So Leon, I'm truly excited to be on this podium here with you tonight. This is my second one. Actually, this is my third one. In the first one, we talk about solutions and how we can move Liberia forward. And the other one, I think we had a few folks here. We talked about the budget and some of the adequacies and inadequacies in the budget. And tonight, I'm really excited for us to continue this discussion. Um, I've been very fortunate, Leah, to have been work with a number of different organizations, a number of different companies in the U.S. With a background in management and organization leadership. So it's a great opportunity to be able to come in and just openly talk about our country, talk about what we can do to really move our country forward. And I think this is where we all should be engaged in these type of discussions, because we are not going to move our country forward if we really don't engage in the candid discussion, earnest, candid discussion about where we think our country will go. Countries, nations everywhere I engage in challenges, to be able to expedite development in a particular country, and to be able to improve the democratic process, right? In order to enhance social inclusion within all the different societies. But it starts at the core, the very core of it. It starts with some of the things that we're going to talk about at the executive branch. But within that, I think governance, as we're going to see, is a major driver of that. So, Leah, I'm awful excited to be here to engage you as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. King. And as you all know, this is Primetime Sunday. Your usual host is Dennis Jai, but Dennis Jai is not here today, so I'm sitting in his place. So in case you are wondering if this was the Liberian Dream that I usually host, no, this is Primetime Sunday with Dennis Jai, and I'm Leo Johnson sitting in his stead today. So like I said, we'll be talking about solutions on governance and leadership and the system, the structure, the people, and in that context, we'll be talking about the executive branch of government slash the presidency as we see it. So, Dr. King, maybe I should give you the opportunity to kind of bring us your opening statement, just an opening on the topic itself, with a focus on the executive slash the presidency. Set the tune for us here. Give us some fundamental foundational pieces here that should get us going for tonight.
Yeah, and let me say this, and I think sometimes too, and just researching and understanding countries and government around the world, I think sometimes we kind of miss the point, right? That within a democratic government, there's three branches of government, and within those three branches of government, each of those have separate power under the Constitution to be able to do things. And then in most cases, we see in most places in most country, Leon, that sometimes we cross that boundary. And even though the Constitution really sets that boundary very clearly, in most cases, we kind of trip on that. Now, from the executive branch, the Constitution gives the president as the chief executive officer within a nation or country or anywhere. And he has particular power. And within that executive branch, you have not only the president, you have the vice president, and not only the vice president, you have all the different ministries of government and all of the different agencies of government are part of that, right? But the whole idea there's a fiduciary responsibility that office, that the executive branch holds, right? And it's not only carrying out the vision of the country of the executive, but it's also in terms of the policies and being and able to drive all of those as well. So those are very key things that needs to happen from the executive branch of government, and the Constitution provides all of that, Leon, as we're going to discuss.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And for those of you, our viewers out there, please, we welcome your interactions as usual through your comments. I'm very sure we will have some time to open the phone lines for those of you who might want to dial in. But in the meantime, I encourage you to keep your comments coming, as we will be looking at your comments to ensure we can interact with you tonight. Now, you set the stage for us here, Dr. King. Now, many Liberians, let's come to our particular context for tonight, which is the Republic of Liberia. Many Liberians are not satisfied with the state of the nation. It's been 175 years, especially when it comes to the issue of governance and leadership. Talk to any Liberian somewhere, they have some kind of complaint and some kind of issue, and many of them justified, to be honest, when you look at our history as a country. Many tourists have put it in different ways as to what the real issues are. Starting with the executive branch of government, is the issue structure? Is it systemic? Or is it the people themselves that are the problem? Or what is it, in your opinion, Dr. King?
Yeah. So I would say it's a combination. It's a combination of all of that, and I think Leon, that's a very interesting point. I'm always going to lean on the Constitution. What I always want to say that for anyone who transpired to leadership, you need to be able to look at the Constitution and read and understand what the constitutions of any nation, any country says, right? But put Constitution aside, and that's a very core ingredient of all of this of the executive branch, because that guides you. That the Constitution guides your decision making. It guides everything you do from that executive branch. Because remember now, the president's objective, that executive branch, is not only to carry out laws and enforce laws, right? But it's also there to be able to that executive branch actually is one of the major drivers. But sometimes, as I said earlier, we kind of sidestep that from a lot of African countries. In my own country, in Liberia particularly, we've seen instances where, and we've seen a whole lot of stuff going on this week, even on the political side, that we saw that there was the executive branch was influencing certain things in terms of the court decisions and all of those. But let's step aside. The executive branch is to be very clear, because the executive branch is there mainly to be able to provide for the citizens of the country. And you need to be able to do things, to be able to do that and enforce that and to be able to carry that out. Now, case in point, as in that executive branch, you need to be very clear about what it is you're really going to do for the country in terms of the visions, and be able to set the visions, and not only enforcing the laws, but be able to do things that will be able to care for the well-being of the country and of the people in the country. And sometimes we kind of overstep that. So a simple thing here, Dennis, from a government, simple thing here is that we find it difficult for folks we haven't heard about this, Leon, but tell me, for folks in the executive branch to even be able to declare the assets, because, as a leader, you need to build that trust and you need to build that confidence in your administration to make sure that you are really doing the right thing. And then that also involves accountability, right? And it also involves being very transparent about what is it that you're doing as a leader, right? And I think once you build that trust, and being able to be open and transparent and accountable, I think the people are really going to look in a leader and what you do and be honest about it. Now, don't say I'm going to do X, but then you probably don't achieve that and you do Y. But even if you don't do X, but be honest with the people and come to them, or Leon, and say, listen, we couldn't achieve this because of that, because you were put in office by the people to
Okay.
be able to provide the opportunities you need to move the country forward.
Yeah. Now, somebody will say, Dr. King, that's easier said than done when it comes to the field of politics. So when I hear you, what I'm hearing you say is the people. So whoever is elected, or those that are elected,
Mm-hmm.
in this case, the presidency, you're putting a lot on whoever is the president in terms of the way they conduct themselves. And you talk about the reliance on the Constitution. Obviously, we all know that should be the reliance for governance. But let me come back at you and say the Constitution of Liberia, the only real requirement is age. There is not much of a requirement. But all of these things you're talking about take a lot of sophisticated skills, and
Mm-hmm.
abilities to be able to actually do. So, am I hearing you say, is it the system, or is it the individual, or is it the people? Like, what are you? I want you to kind of dig a little
Well,
deeper on
yeah,
explaining
well,
that.
it is a system, and I think I don't like, and a lot of times we tend to put the blame on the people. Yes, ask the people, right? Um, we are right, and we are responsible for the people we elect and we put in office, right? But then again, from a systematic perspective, as an executive branch, we need to be able to do the things, right? That would be able to create the opportunities and all of that for the people to be able to enhance that. So, and people come and say, well, the Liberian people, I normally don't put the blame on the Liberian people. Yes. And I know they sometimes they do elect people into offices, maybe that don't have the ability, the skills to be able to do the work. But I also look at the idea, the whole systematic approach, the whole system of how we do things, relying on the Constitution, the decision that we make, being transparent, being open, being honest about all our transactions and dealings with government. And I give you one example. Like right now, there's a whole lot of issues that's being said about Meta Steel, right? And what's happening in Grand Bassa County today. Um, but there's a whole lot of talk happening around that. But it's the government executive branch, in addition to the legislature, who's responsible to making sure that that contract, whatsoever it is going to be in the interest of the Liberian people.
So that's a great point. So I'm hearing you say there's a little bit here to go around, a complex combination of the system. Yeah, you don't like to blame the people too much, or the legislature that you just mentioned. So it's a good segue. Let's talk a little more about the actual problem itself, and we might come back and forth here,
Mm-hmm.
giving how our discussion unfold. But let's go a little deeper into the problem. We got a lot of books written on the imperial presidency, right? Which describes the president of Liberia having way too much power. And I mean, we can attest to that in reality when we see it. Example, the president has the power to appoint down to the principal of BWI. The president has the power to appoint down to the paramount chief in a small village somewhere in Bogonima, or in Kawekan. Now, what will you say is that part of the problem when it comes to the imperial presidency? A lot of Liberians have been a lot of theories on this out there that people have talked about, that the Liberian presidency is way too imperial in terms of how much power it wields. So as a result, we are seeing some of the things we actually see. What do you say to that, Dr. King?
Yeah, and that's true. There's some truth to that statement, and I think we've seen that for quite a bit. But I'll tell you what's happening around some of the nation that I've seen around the world, and even our neighbor Ghana. We've seen where they've been involved a lot around decentralization, right? And from a government perspective, so what I've done is being able to transform some of the government activities and all that stuff that's happening within central government, and being able to transform that to the local government to be able to empower and enable the local government to be able to do some of the things you're talking about here, Leon. So then all right, what decentralization, what is it and what it means? Not only just transferring that power and decision making, right, to the local government, but doing it in ways that is going to enable those environment. And for example, one way you can do that is maybe through administrative decentralization, right? Maybe looking at different groups in those different areas in the subdivision, and enabling them transform a lot of stuff you do, enabling them from a lot of that decision making and power from the central government to that. So that, for example, in the case where in the imperial presidency, then the president wouldn't be that particular function, like appointing all of those local folks in those areas. Those things can happen there, but with central government supervision on top of that to make sure that's happening. You can do that. Another way you can also do that, and that's from the political side of it, Leon, right? Another way you can do it is also from the fiscal side of it, right? So what you can do is from a fiscal decentralization, what you can do is you can, for example, from a taxes. So like for example, Grand Bassa County, right? So all of the taxes and revenue that are generated back in Grand Bassa County, empower them, transfer that, so that all that resources that there is used to create opportunities within Grand Bassa County. So this whole thing about imperial presidency has to do with power, right, and transform a lot of that there, and so that though the resources from there will be used to provide opportunities in that area. Case in point, I think it was the year 2018, 2019. The Liberian government budget to Grand Bassa County was around $450,000, right? But 2 years after that, it was basically almost, I wouldn't say zero, but it was about $13,000 that was allotted for Grand Bassa County. It had increased, and in 2021, that increased to about $1.5 million now to Grand Bassa County, of the $2.5 million that's being generated from Mita Steel, right? So this whole idea of I think one way you can do it is the decentralization in order to reduce the whole idea of the imperial precedent that we also talk about, right? Another way is it may be too, and we can also talk about this, Leon, is by what you call devolution, right? But also there's also privatization. But devolution is where you can say, okay, based on the particular area, say for example, LOFA. So LOFA is great. It may be in agriculture production or in forestry, but provide that service, enable that transfer, the management of all of that to maybe to LOFA, and so that they create opportunities and all of that, right? So this whole idea of imperial precedent, I think it can be remedied, but it can be remedied by decentralizing and moving things to different local subdivision, right? And you can do that, but you need to be able to provide a constitutional amendment to be able to address those.
Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Mansfield Dwopul. You just joined us. Welcome here, sir. Good to see you. I will kind of go straight to you here. We will baptize you.
Thank you very much.
Since you're just joining us. So I will turn to you and say, so we've been talking about governance and leadership in the context of the Republic of Liberia, and we'll focus on the executive here, or the presidency, as we would call it. And we were just talking about the problem, how there have been many accounts of the imperial presidency in Liberia and how it has functioned, that it has so much power. The president can even appoint down to the principal at BWI if the president so wants. Now, my thing is, the Constitution of Liberia, which Dr. King clearly laid out, is the reliance upon which our governance system works. The Constitution of Liberia only requires, the biggest requirement is age. There's not much of a requirement other than maybe residency, be a Liberian citizen. The main thing that stands out is how old you should be to become president. So I guess my question I will ask you as a segue is, And all of the things you've described, Dr. King, are very complicated leadership skills that are required. This is not something that everybody has. If everybody walking around the place had those abilities, I think our life would be easier. You could close your eyes and pick anyone and put them there, and they would be fine. So how do we ensure then, if it is not the system that is the problem, how do we ensure that the people who are capable of doing the job get to the presidency with so much power when the Constitution really only has age requirement and residency and Liberian citizenship requirements? So, Mr. Dopo, I'll kind of let you do your intro here and then jump right in, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
You're very audible. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for joining you guys late. I had some prior engagements that I had to attend to, and but I saw the whole thing that Dennis sent me about this discussion today, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And just I think I was hearing is that Dr. King? Huh? Hi, how are you?
Pretty good, man. Good to be here with you.
The imperial presidency, and that is so true in our body politic. It goes back to the foundation of the nation state itself. So when you look at the history of Liberia, how Liberia was founded, the whole issue of a gunboat diplomacy that ushered in this new nation, it was based on imperialism. So that was kind of couched in our political history over time, our political socialization, where the president, everything revolves around the president. The president's power is so massive. It's so widespread. It impacts everybody's life. So you wake up in the morning, you're thinking what the president will do for that morning. You're thinking what he'll do and he goes to bed and all that. So it's our political history. It's our political socialization. So to tackle it, it needs a thinking of how we see the presidency, because you see, power is such a fluid dynamic. It's such a fluid commodity. And in the new power arrangement, what leadership theoreticians have postulated in the new power arrangement is that we live in a shared power world. The days where one person can just assume to himself or herself all the power, those days are over, because right now in the modern power calculation, there are power centers in fiefdoms. People have powers in local constituencies. And those people are very powerful. They come with a lot of pedigree. They come with leadership. They come with not just de facto leadership, but de jure leadership. Based on the entrustment of the people who they lead. So the new thinking, and we Liberians need to put ourselves in that mindset, is power is evolving. It's everywhere. People have power even in their own communities. With the advent of technology and other, the movement of people, globalization beyond national borders. The whole concept of borders now is becoming so obsolete. So power is something that is evolving, and unless we Liberian kind of grasp, the magnitude of a powerful presidency, the power that has been entrusted in the presidency, we still have a long way to go, because there will be a lot of contestations for that power. It will be fierce, and everybody wants a little piece of the pie. So we found this, knuckleheads of political contestants wanting that power. So we have to understand it from that dynamic. So right. It has been imperial from the very founding of the country, because it was founded on an imperialistic mantra. Somebody coming from, to this new place and imposing his will, making sure that agreements were signed based on some kind of military posture and all that. So we have to be thinking about it as we celebrate 200 years of our independence. How that independence itself came into being. That that was based on imperialism. So we got to look at it from that context.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Dwopu.
Yeah.
But I mean, somebody would say, my old man from Redle or Douala or wherever would say, okay, you're right, but there's no perfect system or structure. It's the people that make every system work, right? So if Liberians are corrupt, if Liberians are unpatriotic, if Liberians are wicked to themselves, a system of governance is not the issue, because guess what? In terms of imperialism and colonialism, Liberia got it nice. Other countries around got it even harsher, that were under direct colonial rule, whether it was Ghana, whether it was Sierra Leone, whether it was Cote d'Ivoire, that actually had a more formal, much more longer colonial rule compared to Liberia that managed to get, I mean, whatever you want to say, from the beginning we got independence 1847. But people would say the great United States, if we photocopy the Constitution of the United States and pretty much decided to replicate it, how come other places are making it work, but when in Liberia it is not working? So is it the people, or is it the system of government? Because it is the people that make the system of government works or not. Dr. King, I will come to you, and then I will actually come back to you also, Mr. Dwopu.
Yeah, and you said me.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So Leon, you make a very strong point there, and I'll tell you what it is though. We got to, and maybe I'll say this, but maybe 2023 is the year that maybe we turn the curve on this, right? And maybe the factor in maybe a new leadership that will begin to really begin to think through some of these things. Because you need that mindset. So some of the things I talk about, well, other countries are doing, for example, in decentralization, Ghana, Botswana, all of these countries are experiencing that where they have this decentralized government. They make sure that at the very lower level is participative, right? Is people at that level are involved in the decision making, is participative, they're involved in the decision making and all of that. But you need that. But then again, you need the appetite for us saying that, listen, and some of the points that you mentioned there, Leon, that the Constitution is not working for us. So maybe we need to go back and kind of revisit that. Because even way for you to move around the approach of decentralizing power to all the different groups or different areas at the local level, even at the meso level, it has to be part of the Constitution, but it's not. And so there you also have a challenge of how you do that. So maybe an opportunity for the future is in a new leadership to say, maybe let's look at this Constitution. And for example, case in point, look at the way we elect our members to represent us, right? You have a senator there for 9 years with all of this power, but he's there for 9, and that's the judiciary branch, but you have him there for 9 years. But also look at our president. Our president is there for 6 years. So yes, the challenge. If you got a president who is very ineffective, you have a president who is not creating value for the people, but he's there for long term. So what do you do? Do you put the blame on the people? I don't know. And then we can all people say, well, just put the blame on the people, but I don't think we do. But yes, the other thing I say quickly, and I get to Mr. Dwopu, is that I always say this. Maybe what needs to change in Liberia, and I think for Liberia to really change, we wanted 1, new leadership, 2, our mindset, the way we think about stuff, and 3, maybe it's a generational thing. Then we got to start doing from education, and the Constitution calls for that. Mass education, the Constitution of Liberia calls for mass education, mass educating everybody, but we don't do that. So those are some things that we can do to looking towards the future on how we can fix these inadequacies.
Thank you, Dr. King. And just before I come to you, Mr. Dwopu, I will throw a kind of little twist to it there when I you take it on. Let me give you an example. I live in Canada. People say Canada is a democratic country, right? But it's actually a constitutional monarchy. So the Queen of England has the power to suspend the elected member of parliament in Canada. The Queen of England, when the Prime Minister does his budget bill to pass, it has to go to the Queen for approval to come back. So the people can go for election, elect their parliamentarians, and if the Queen decides that she has a reason to send them home, she can suspend them and send them home and do what she wants before she brings them back. But hey, Canada works. Have you ever heard anybody calling Canada a monarchy, or saying we need to change Canada or put sanction on it. It worked. It works for them. Their system of governance is actually very effective, even though it is a constitutional monarchy. So
Mhm.
that begs the question to Liberia: is the problem the system or the constitution or the system of governance we have in place, or is it something else? Because clearly other people are making theirs work the way they see it work, but we seem to be stuck in this one place.
Yeah, but let me
Mr.
let me let me jump on that. And I think it's the core to our stuff tonight is leadership, though, right? Is in another hitting thing there, though. If of all of these countries you're talking about, there's one thing that's always there. It's law for country. Okay, they look. If you look at if you look at the Constitution of Liberia, if you read through the Constitution of Liberia, we have a document that guide us in Liberia, so that's not an issue. But I think the whole idea of the leaders that we are like, and so that and the people might take some responsibility for that, but the kind of leaders that we like and put into office, I don't think are leaders that really truly care for the country. And that's what your problem. You talk about Canada, United States, the Americans do love America. They can go anywhere in the world they want to come back to America. And I think that's what we really need to do.
Thank you, Dr. King. Mr. Dwabo, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I think you brought up a very salient point about if it is a leadership issue or a constitutional issue or a systemic issue. It also goes back. I don't think the next election is going to change that, like Dr. King is trying to insinuate, because it's part of our political history. And history evolves. Politics evolve over time. There's an evolutionary process taking place in Liberia. I had an opportunity to have worked at the Governance Commission, and one of the things that we worked on was the decentralization policy, which, of course, I don't know how effective that policy is, but it should be very, very effective because it was approved by the cabinet under Ellen, and that should have formed part of our national rebranding. Because that policy sought to have, taken power from the center to the periphery, to devolve power from the center to the periphery. That's how you see the county development fund has been instituted, although it has been, a very contentious, policy that our government has developed. Some people use it for personal gains or to advance their own political causes. But those were some of the concepts that were in that decentralization document. And it also, having counties having their own service center, taking the administration from Monrovia, because Liberia is a unitary state, unlike Canada that is federalized, and they have real power in the provinces, in the United States, they have power in the states rights and all that. Liberia, we should remember, it's a unitary state. And that whole concept of Unitarianism is for power to be concentrated in a particular person, in a particular geographic area for the country. Because you can't have the president living in Maryland, living in Cape Mount, and other places at the same time. The executive mansion kind of, epitomizes our political power. There's the Capitol Hill, the Capitol Building, the executive mansion, the Supreme Court. Those are institutions that epitomize our power structure. So to have these kind of conversations, it would take the people themselves who elect, the officials, because we have elections over time. We've had successive elections now. It takes political consciousness. It takes, like Dr. King was talking about, mass education. So these things are happening. Discussions are going on. The people are understanding these things. Sometimes, there's this whole teleological fallacy that asserts that because certain things currently serve a certain purpose, it must have been designed to serve that purpose. No, we have a constitution that has been designed, but it can be changed because it's a living document. It reflects the thinking of the day. So our political leaders, the opposition, they have, even the people in power, they have a moral obligation to look at our laws, to look at what is thinking of the people, to have plebiscite, to have engagement with the people, and say, look, we have these laws, we have this constitution. Does it reflect the reality of the day? Those questions need to be asked. Academic, scholars at the universities, they need to be thinking about these things. People doing that research in this kind of comparative, political analysis. They need to be looking at the Constitution and seeing it and dissecting it and see if the Constitution is living up to the reality of the day. So the whole leadership mantra is not just people in power. Like I said, we live in a shared power world. It's about the civil society organizations. They have a stake. It's about private corporations. It's about government. It's about political movements. It's about trade union. It's about student movement and all the whole conundrum. Those people are involved in the body politic. It's not just the people in power, because they might not be interested in that. But if you have a strong opposition, if you have a strong civil society organization that can hold feet to the fire, I think the kind of conversation can be elevated. Our people can be taught what is going on. They can have a say in the discussion, and those things can come over time. We can never be like Canada just within a snap of a finger. No, Canada has been in existence for more than 500 years, maybe. America, prior to the real foundation of America, there were political organizations here. So Liberia's founding itself, had we had those kind of education since 1822, we've not had those education. We've not had that. We've had a system where our government was elitist. It was a monolithic kind of government, where so say one, so say all. So over time now we are developing and we're having political parties are, evolving. Elections are taking place. These things evolve over time. We hope that, we can fast track the evolution of our political, our political agreements. We can make sure that we can have consensus, because all that is in the body politic. So we have to make those steps. We have to concretize those steps and make sure that, we are living, our constitution is living up to the reality of the day. There are a lot of things in the constitution that need to be changed. A lot of people clamoring about, the tenureship and all that stuff, and the senators, they have 9 years of being senators, and it cannot be reduced to create competition, and all that. So those are discussions that we need to start having, and we need to start looking at some legal frameworks to move the discussion and make sure that it's done civilly and it's done in the interest of the people.
Thank you, Mr. Dobo. You make quite a number of points there. So, by the way, Liberia is older than Canada. Canada got independence in 1867, and many other countries as well.
Yeah,
so,
but the very independence itself is fallacious.
I know what you're saying.
Independent and all
before
that.
Then, you're saying they had some type of structure. In place.
Yeah. I want to pick up.
To just add a point, our very independent, it was just for a small group of people living on Ashmont Street and Broad Street, or not for the entire population. So
that's a different show for a different day. I would try to. You're right. But I would try to not go there. But let me kind of pivot, and then Dr. King, you can come in here. Now that we've spoken about the problems, as we've clearly outlined them, I'd like to talk about some solutions, and that is where I want to bring in the conversation about decentralization and devolution, like you both have already indicated. About where we should be going and some of the things we should be talking about when it comes to the imperial presidency. But I have a question for you guys here. Mm-hmm. So just because we decentralize, as we see right now, even with the legislature, we do have elections for members of the legislature, both the Senate and the House of Representatives. That doesn't guarantee getting the right outcomes that we've looked for. And by the way, this is not something that's been happening over 10 years. Let's forget about even pre-Chewing Party or during the time of the Chewing Party. Let us take it from post-war, post-war Liberia until now. We've seen the legislature. So whether we decentralize in a way where we are devolving power into the various counties, into these various segments of our political makeup, whether it's at the county level, at the district level, at the superintendent level, at the even clan chief and paramount chiefs, if you want to take it up to that point. That still does not give us any indication that we are, because all of the things you are describing, to implement them, you need the caliber of people with the right qualifications, experiences, and mindset, because you're talking about leadership here. And if it is leadership that's going to drive this, how can you convince me that decentralization and devolution is actually going to get us there in that manner? Dr. King, I can start with you, and then we'll come back to
Yeah,
Mr.
and before I get to that, I know what I said, and the reason why I said maybe 2023, um, that with the right leadership, and I think other African countries have faced similar situation like Liberia, but other African countries are beginning to move the needle towards that direction. Now, for example, if you with the right leader, right? Because I like there's an author, it's called Gary Ugal, that I really like. He says one thing about leadership. He said leadership is influencing. And I think that's very key. So if you have the right leader, he can begin to influence others to be able to move things in one direction. I give you an example. For example, like Meter Steel in Grand Bassa, from my hometown, I'm from Grand Bassa. So the 2.5 million that Meter Steel is giving to the Liberian government, a fraction of that goes back to Bassa. A good leader would say, listen, we have to really turn this around. Maybe that $2.5 million go to Grand Bassa County to help maybe with education, help with every other things to continue to develop that part of the country. To your point, Leon, is a tricky one, because let me tell you, all of this, you need one, the political will to get it to do that. Okay. Um, and the other challenge is that we don't respect what we have. We don't. Even with the Constitution, I mean, we see that people violate the Constitution every day in Liberia, every day. Even the House of Representatives violate the Constitution, right? And so that's a really major issue there. What I'm saying is, we need to, and this is where I think we need a systematic, right? We cannot put the blame on the people. We cannot put it on the system. It's all of those: the leadership, the system, and the people, to make sure that even for the next election, those who are coming in, that we really, and it's a challenge, but really identify people that we know, that who really cares, who say what they're going to do. A is A, B is B. If we have those, we can identify those people and elect those people, then we can drive towards some of the things we're talking about, Leo. But you need to have the right kind of caliber of people. And it's not always about, well, the president have to have a maximum degree. That's not what it is. But my thing is, you got to have love for the country. You have to be sincere. You have to say, this is what we really need to make our country work. And it's not about me. It's not about myself and individualism. Individualism is something that's been killing us, and it undermines our leadership, it undermines our country, it undermines our people, it undermines everything we do. But it's all about me, myself, and I.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. King. Mr. Dopu, you can go ahead. So I think you already got my question there.
Yeah, I think it has to do with like we said, leadership is something that's evolving nowadays. It's about power and the disbursement of that power. Because to be a good leader, there are some qualities you must have. I mean, you have to be sincere. You got to be a person with integrity, a person with some level of honesty and humility, and have a clear focus. But when we talk about leadership, it's not just one person. When we start to deify people and make them imperial and think leadership is just, is kind of bequeathed to them, that's a dangerous place we will be as a people. That one person will make all the rules, be a player and also a referee and a judge and all that stuff. That's a dangerous place we'll be going. I think what we need to work on is a collectivity of people in different sectors, at different levels of our society. If it means we go train people in the villages about what good leadership is all about, that should be a trickle-down effect. Because our country, we should remember now, we have a traditional society. It's not this, Western democracy where everything is based on individual rights, individualism, and all that stuff. You have to understand that our country is it has a socialistic, bent to it, collective ownership, and all that. So if you're looking at leadership, you got to look at it within that context of our own socialization processes. We have to start training people at the universities, high schools, and all that stuff to make sure that they understand the whole leadership mantra, that the president is not just the only leader in the country. The Marketing Association has a leadership, and that leadership is powerful. There's a constituency, and that constituency can make political claims. That constituency can alter public policy. You strengthen that. The student movement is a constituency. Liberal National Student Union, and other student organizations, the trade unions. You know what trade unions can do in advanced countries? In Liberia, trade unions were very powerful. Now that it has been watered down because of politics and all that. They don't have good leaders who understand the labor movement and all that. But because those things are part of the economy, workers' rights, it's part of human rights. It's part of how you provide the basic necessities for your people. And workers will make sure they form unions. They can have collective bargaining and all that. We need to develop those things, even in the work culture. He talked about metal, steel in Buchanan, and the money they give, as their corporate social responsibility. You can give the money to the political authorities, the superintendent and the other folks. It may not trickle down to somebody in number 7 or somebody in Kingsville or other places in Bassa. The people say, well, they don't even know that money, even that check was even signed. They will just hear maybe and that will cause social discontent, and that is a recipe for crisis.
So while you're there,
what?
Yeah, while you're there, Mr. Dopo, let me just throw one question. You can start, and I'll go to Dr. King so we can go to comments. But let me just throw this in, though. You're talking about we should train, we should try and shift the mindset, the work ethics, even the attitudes. Yeah. If we're looking at Liberia realistically, the church is corrupt. The mosques are corrupt. The community association is corrupt. The marketing association is corrupt. Even the traditional societies now, people are now using politics to actually determine what they actually do there, as we're seeing. Whether it's Bonkante, whether it's Nimba, we've seen it go around. So how is decentralization or devolution going to help any of this problem at all when every fabric of our society, from kindergarten all the way down to the religious sector of our society, has shown such innate corruption up to the political offices? Like you said, leadership is not just the presidency. It goes all through, it's woven through the fabric of our society. Where do we start?
Well, I think there are still good people in Liberia. I won't just paint a broad brush, and just cast people as there are still good people. Even
how come are we not seeing them? How come they are hating?
In the various institutions that you've named, the church, the other public institutions, because you see, with good leadership, you can create a vision. After you can still, there's something still good about Liberia. I don't think we can just cast that kind of blanket aspersion on the entire country. I will.
So why are the good people hating? So where are all these good people
it's not like the good people are hating. There are institutions in Liberia that are still working. There are civil society organizations that are still making advances in their courses, making sure that what they believe in is articulated. It will take time. A good leader can create a vision and It can motivate the people. It can bring to reality what the people want. For instance, I mean, you have the Liberian human rights organizations. Those people have been citing human rights abuses in Liberia. Aren't they making an impact? They are. You have people in other organizations who have been articulating their claims in the body politic. It will take time. Our country, our country was ruled for almost 140 years by an oligarchy. Now that we are advancing to a multi-party democracy, we are making progress in that direction. We are making progress. And over time, I think we still have people who will evolve, leaders will come to the fore, and the country is shifting. You can see that there's a shift in the country. People go on radio, they make their voices known, they make their positions clear and all that. There's a multiple, diverse public opinion out there. People are saying different things based on what they believe. That culture of having a civic dialogue is being engendered in our country now. That has never happened over, our country's history. Those are progress that we can look at, and we can also build on those progress. So I won't just cast such a blanket aspersion on our people that because institutions that we look up to are corrupt, and we just lay back and say, well, it's finished. We just wipe our hands, and our country. Then what becomes our society? What becomes of posterity?
So I'm not saying it's finished. I got to ask the question. So I just put the question. You guys can help us put up where we go.
Based on how you ask the question, that's why I came up with that.
No, fair.
Statement.
Yeah, fair enough.
And
No, fair enough.
Can I chime in there, Leo?
Well, Dr. King, I'm actually coming to you. Is your turn?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to add a little twist to what I was saying, and then you can take it up from there with your points. So, for example, our current president, His Excellency President George Weah, almost every Sunday takes up on the pulpit to preach. As far as we know, he's not a pastor. He's never been ordained anywhere that we know of. I'm saying that we know of because I don't know if he may have been ordained that we don't know, but you guys can help educate me here. Is that a desecration of the pulpit where now our president can take the pulpit and preach every single Sunday sermons from the pulpit when we know to be a pastor, to get to that position, it requires a certain type of training. Not everybody can be a pastor. So I'm using that as to say, where is the leadership of our country? I haven't seen anybody put a question onto that or even give us some clarification as to how come overnight we now see this. And Mr. Dobo, you have a point as well on that because I choose something else in, but let me get Dr. King first, and then we can kind of go to our comments. Go ahead, Dr. King.
And let me say before I get to that quickly, Leon, let me say, and we all admit that our country is inherently corrupt, okay? And it's been going on for a long time. And the corruption is across the three branches of government, right? So, I mean, we've seen this past week with all the stuff that's going on within the CPP and how the executive branch, even though the executive branch has the ability to be able to carry out laws and enforce the laws, but we've seen issues where the SG is going and doing stuff to, for example, Mr. Cummings in CPP. So our country is inherently corrupt. We cannot just look at corruption in terms of money. It's completely all across the board. Now, let me tell you one of the things that's happening. I cannot criticize President Weah on relation judgment or what he does because I think only God can do that. But let me say, in terms of a leader, is a lack of focus. Liberia has a multiplicity of problems. We have one of the poorest education system in the world. We have very, very high inflation in the country. We had dilapidated school systems. Go anywhere, look at the university that I went to. Look at the University of Liberia, look at the buildings of the university. Look at our healthcare delivery system. Just name anything. Look at the courts. So we have all of these problems. So then here you have our leader who's completely out of going, maybe preaching or going to do music or play soccer or play football or do basketball. With all of these problems, we have a very clear vision on how we get there. I don't know. I think initially there was the whole pro poll, but we don't even know what's happening. What's the outcome, right, of that whole pro poll? But in terms of some of the things we've been talking about, Leon, and the way you be able to solve some of these, even at that level, at the local level, is, for example, one, you put in for really good government. This is what I'm saying, that maybe in 2023, with the right leadership, that we can really turn the corner on this. You have monitoring evaluation. There's automated systems around the world that you can do that you hold people accountable. And so, for example, at the local level, if you decentralize decision-making authority at the local level, and if it's being misused, you replace that. And the Constitution talks about it going against nepotism that I think the Ellen Johnson government was accused about, right? So you make sure you put the right people in those areas, and don't put your brothers and sisters there, because it weakens you as a leader in terms of decision making. But you do that, you hold people accountable, put the right monitoring evaluation systems, and do all of those, and make sure that you also have the right resources to make sure all those things happen. And again, hold people accountable, Leon. And if someone doesn't get the job done, find somebody else to get the job done. I know in the world, there's a lot of smart Liberians. Some of the best schools around the world, they are available. You have to make sure that you create the opportunity to attract them to Liberia to be able to get some of these things we're talking done.
Thank you. I want to see if we can take a few comments and I can let you guys respond just to see what our audience have been saying, so we can see some of the interaction, and I can start with you. Sela Afwe Nanse, the people are their own problem. They keep voting for the wrong leaders. Thank you, Sarah and Sela, for your contribution. William King say, although I have not come up with an alternative solution, I think income and asset declaration is not the right approach to prevent corruption and promote transparency. I do not think it simply works. It also exposes high net worth individuals to security risks. Thoughts? That's our brother William King there. Thank you. Emmanuel Jackson said, the executive branch of government must never interfere in the functions of the justice and legislative branches of government. Thank you for your contribution, Emmanuel. Batum Kula said, Imperial presidency was on display again when we took over the county league. Thanks, Batum, for your contribution. Lawrence Powell said, historically, the country did not have an imperial president until President Totman took office. President Totman enabled the imperial president, I think you meant as a part of the country's constitution. Thanks for your contribution, Lawrence. It's a perfect manager, Maurice Krumah. Liberia problem is not just the imperialized presidency. We need a cultural shift. Again, Maurice Krumah says, but other countries around us were also victims of imperialism. We see Lawrence Powell say, I think you meant decentralization of government depends on the local government abilities and capabilities to generate its own revenue. Dr. Sawyer appointed a committee to study and make recommendations in this area. Thank you, Lawrence Powell. Gako Wing, God favors me, says, point of correction, it is the Governor General of Canada, not the Queen. So the Governor General of Canada is appointed by the Queen. So the Governor General reports to the Queen. So maybe you didn't know that when they say the Governor General, that is the Queen's representative. William King says, may I ask how the panelists plan on funding these reforms? Leo, maybe you can chime in, but it appears Canada allocates adequate funding for their programs. Thank you, William King. Maurice Croman says again, Mansfield Dopu, your assertions about the origin of the state as a justification for imperialism is faulty. The way we connect as citizens to the state in itself is a problem. Power, whether decentralized or not, is still power. It has authority and command. Those qualities, regardless of the place it resides, authority. I don't know what you meant by that. But it's not the power sharing, but instead the power we perceive it as a people. Emmanuel Jackson says, yes, Mansfield is right. Mansfield is right. One of the most misstep of the settlers to create a national government based on class imperial structure didn't take into account the indigenous nature of the country, especially the practice of British enlightenment and not being colonized by Britain. Those institutional investments haven't been realized up to today. Emmanuel Jackson, when you use all caps lock, it means you are screaming, just so you know. Fort Morrison says, you need one powerful thing, rule of law. There should be accountability from the top down.
Yes.
Thank you, Fort. Morris Kroma again say, are you guys taking calls? I have been on the line for a while now. Yeah, we have to give our panelists the opportunity first to expand on the issue before you can call, sir. Thank you there. So I think we will take Moria. Dwalu, Angasi Dwalu says, not true, Leo. Liberians are not innately corrupt. In fact, I will argue that they are not corrupt at all. The appearance of that corrupt culture exists because of the lack of enforcement. Okay, so if they were not corrupt, even when there's a lack of enforcement, then there shouldn't be corruption. Yeah, but that's okay. Thanks, my brother Dwalu. Albert Sekou Cole Sr. said, we need one decisive, fearless, selfless patriot president to change Liberia. I hope you're not talking about a dictator. Hopefully not. But thanks for the comments. For those of you, for those of you who have been out there commenting, thank you so much. We will open the phone lines for if you have questions for our panelists. I think some of your comments, you can weave it in, gentlemen, as the calls come in. You can weave in some of the other points you might want to throw in, but we can try and open our phone lines now. Do we have anyone on the line? Somebody said they've been waiting for hours, so I don't want to keep. Do we have someone on the line now?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead, caller. If you're on the line, you can go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Caller, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for unmuting me. My name is Morris Goma, and I've been following the show for quite a while now, and it's a very interesting conversation. I know you guys went from the imperial presidency to other areas and the function of the presidency and regarding its religion and all that stuff. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this whole imperialism and the way we Liberians have perceived our governance structure. I do share some of the sentiment when Memphis said that we're a unitary state. The problem most of us Liberians don't understand, what does that mean? What does it mean when you say, Liberia is a unitary state? And it's true that the power must reside in one specific location. And so because we agreed as a country to have such a governance process, we can also have our cake and eat it. We can also be demanding that we should decentralize power, as with respect to what the doctor was saying on the show. So yes, power should be decentralized. But when we talk about how we decentralize this power, it must be within the framework of this unitary state that we envision, or the founding fathers envisioned when they established the state.
All right.
At some point, if we say, well, this is not a good idea on the way we want to govern our country, we want to change the mechanism of our state, then yes, then we'll have to go back. And that's the reason why we should have qualified legislature that can put in laws that can fix the way the state is perceived. But the way we have our lawmakers now, while I do agree with Memphis that the profile of the country has changed, but the profile has changed in a negative way. We've elected some of the people that demanded change, but these people are not effecting the change from the legislature. We can't blame the president.
All right, Kumar. Thank you so much.
Having quality people that can actually, vision country in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kumar. We'll try to limit you guys to a minute so that our panelists can get the chance to respond as they're taking notes with your call. Do we have another caller?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dualo.
Hello? Oh, okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Leo, great show. Thank you for you guys having this show. I have 2 quick points, and I'll make them one in a minute. Let me say this. When I talk about Liberians not being corrupt, this is what I mean. There's no inborn tendency for Liberians to be corrupt. Our culture does exist in Liberia because we encourage it. Nobody enforces the law relating to that. When Liberians travel to Canada, they don't do corruption there. There's a reason for that, because there are consequences attached to that. This is exactly what I mean. But I'm going to speak to Dr. King. Dr. King did say something that he cannot criticize President Ria religious reasons why he's going to church all the time trying to preach. I want to say this to you, Dr. King. Christians are encouraged to criticize one another. We're not going to wait for God to criticize us. However, if you don't want to be criticized in our life, stay out of public life. When you go into public life, everything you do will be criticized, especially at the level of the presidency. But by the way, Christians don't criticize each other when it comes to sin and their behavior. The Bible asks you to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dwalu, for your succinct point there. Do we have another caller?
No.
Okay. We don't have another caller, so I will turn to you. I will start with you, Mansfield, because we end up with Dr. King, and I will come to you, Dr. King, for your quick response as well to the comments that you've heard, and the callers as well. Go ahead, Mansfield.
Well, they made some very important points, especially when the person who talked about the unitarian, our unitarist political system where power is kind of concentrated in a particular place with a particular person or group of people. So to devolve that power, it would take real revolution, because power is something that people rely on in our political history, and those associated with them also benefit from that power, through whatever means they can extract from that power, but just mere association with people who have power. That has been our history over 200 years plus. So to change that mindset, it would take serious engagement with those who hold the power today and those who are trying to get that power from them, because it's a contestation. It's something that is not is it won't be easily done by those who hold the power. Over time, we have been acculturated, we have been brainwashed that the president holds all the power. Even domestic issues, president can intervene. Can you imagine that the extent to which our presidents have intervened in our history? Domestic issue between husband and wife, tribal issue. They have been given tribal titles and all that. Those are powerful, symbols to entrust a person with, power from a traditional tribal standpoint, societal standpoint, and trust him, even in the urban societies that they have. The president is, if it means the Masonic craft and all that, the president can be a member of it, or else you might not survive. Because our decisions are made. So
All right.
the whole power dynamics, and he said it. I think it was Kruman who, he agreed with me on that front. So to change that, we should have some serious discussion. We should have a national conference. We should have people coming and really hammering that home that we need to devolve power. We need to reduce some of the power that the president has, the power that members of the legislature, because I think, in my own view, that he was saying about our legislature. I've spoken about us having a part-time unicameral legislature to reduce costs, to reduce. There's a big wage burden on the government when it comes to paying legislators.
Let me not let you open up Pandora box.
Those are things that we start thinking about as we discuss about the way forward and how we can birth in a Liberia that reflect modernity that other countries can envy, because our history, the amount of the independence of our country, the 200 years independence cannot be matched by the development of other countries, even in our neighborhood, that have made serious advance in their socio-economic life.
Yeah. So to just so you know, I know Dr. King has a hard stop at 7:20, right? So Dr. King, I want to give you the floor here to kind of.
Yeah, I might do a little. I can do a little more to make sure that we all end pretty well. But let me also take. I think there was an initial comment around declaring assets, and the reason why I think it's very effective, and the caller may disagree. I think that in terms of accountability and transparency, as a leader, you want to put everything up there, and that's how you build trust. So leadership is also trust. So you want to be able to say, listen, I'm coming to office, I have X, Y, Z, and this is what it looks like for me. And if I leave office, I'm leaving with this X, Y, Z, or Z, Y, E, for example. And I think as a leader, you need to be able to do that, to be honest. And the way you start to do that is to be transparent with your own finances and things that you do. The caller with respect to a president we are, as Christians, we should be able to hold everyone else accountable. But listen, I'm not here to judge the man's conviction because Liberia had history.
Dr. King, just to interject, I don't know that's the question. The question is, so are you telling me we no longer know what it takes for someone to be a pastor? We're not questioning the man's
We
faith
do,
or
we
the man's
do, we do. We know what it takes to be, and this is where I brought the focus in. But what I'm saying to you is that we had other precedents. We had other, for example, Torvald was also a Baptist preacher. I don't know
He
if Torvald.
he was an ordained Baptist, but he was ordained. He was trained to
but
be
he was not a preacher, but he was
He
ordained.
was.
He was present. All right. So what I'm saying is, and again, that has nothing to do with leadership. And that's my point. So the leadership is being able to focus on the vision, focus on creating opportunities, focus on moving the country forward. And that's my point, because Liberia has not a number of different issues, right? And so you need to be able to focus on that instead of all the other things, because then it becomes a distraction, right? You're not focused on the objective. Yeah, there was another caller that meant, in terms of corruption, yeah, the country is corrupt. And I agree to some point that because of the rule of law, right? So we don't enact the laws that we have on the book enough. And maybe that might be a consequence of that. Yeah. But the whole idea is we all are corrupt now. But the point now, though, Leon, is how we fix this. We can't continue to dwell on the past or because Liberia has always been a unitary state. So we should remain a unitary state. I don't think that's where we need to go. I think where we need to go is, one, look at the leaders that we try to bring in and our people. And then this training. And this is where we talk about this massive training to be able to train our people. You know, one thing, when I was in elementary school in Liberia, you know what was very important there? Was civics. And we know there was challenges there, but civics was taught in Liberian school. They had Liberian civics on how government functions, on the role of government, and all these different things. We need to be able to do that and educate our people, right?
Thank you.
But the challenge is that we have a huge percentage of our population that are marginalized, that are actually functional illiterate, that maybe cannot even read and write. So how you do? But there's ways you can be able to educate them so they know the kind of people they bring into power. And that's what we need to do. But you also need a good leader that will say, folks, let's focus on this. Now, you need a leader with certain traits, right? You need a leader maybe who's a steward leader, who's going to take care of the resources of the country. You need a leader who's also a servant leader, who's not going to think about himself, but also going to think about the well-being of everyone in the country. So those are things you need to do. And that steward leadership and servant leadership should trickle also to the judiciary branch, so that people just don't take envelope because they want to make a decision. And even though the decision doesn't benefit the Liberian government, the people, you take an envelope anyway. So what's the stewardship and servant leadership coming into this? So there's leadership traits that we need to be able to enforce when we elect those people into office, so these things can change. But we cannot just say, let's forget or fold our hands, right? It starts 2023 when we start to elect the right people to that we can put in office. And it's you, Leon, is Mansfield, is me, is every Liberia. We need to start training our people in the villages and towns, the kind of people they should be able to elect to lead them. It's our responsibility to do that.
Thank you, Dr. King. Do we have a caller on the line, just so we can squeeze in one more? Do we have a caller?
Constance Duopu calling from Minnesota.
Go ahead, please.
I would like to say thank you for your program, your presentation today. But I have one or two comments. Like people talking about if we elect a good leader, we have a good leader. We have so many good leaders in Liberia. The reason people are asking for good leaders because people are blinded. We feel like Dr. King said, oh, the leadership has to be this, the leadership. You have to appreciate what you have. Even if they are bad leaders, you cannot tell me in the Republic of Liberia, currently, they are not good leaders. Then you will be speaking to yourself. Because you are Liberian, there are so many good leaders in Liberia. They are leaders in the home. There are women who are raising children when the men are just sitting drinking beer. There are good leaders who pay their children's school fees. Leadership doesn't have to be people in government. You have the Marketing Association. You have the very also or soup people who always talk against the government. Are they everyday leaders of the association, Linsu, also soup as leadership? So when people are talking about leaders, you have to be specific. And when people come on your program, all people expect a president. We are is not. People who have this PhD, these or someone that you call them doctors. You people sit and critic. How many Liberian PhDs holders or master degree holders you can see their research in all these journals that I've been reading. You can see the books they have written to be taught in Liberia. But people sit on Facebook, politicians, and criticize the level of freedom of speech you have in the Republic of Liberia. You had it 1977, you had it 1956. If you're talking about Liberia, it's not making progress. You talk about roads, yes, we talk about the healthcare. It's a progress. Change is a process. It's not one day you wake up. You're talking about leadership, everybody criticizes. The very opposition, are they leading right now their political parties that they're trying to even lead to election? Are they leading?
Thank you, ma'am. She's our only female caller tonight, our last caller. So give her.
Honest. President, we have the right to preach. He's a Christian. He can preach in his home. He can preach in a church. I just want to say thank you for your program. But there are good leaders and there are good people in Liberia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frances, for calling as our only female caller. I will say a few summaries and then I'll let you guys give your closing remarks so we can try and wrap up the evening here. There are a few things I will say. We said a lot, and even from what the callers have actually said. But I think the fundamental questions we also need to be asking is the fact that the government, the system of governance we are talking about here, has always marginalized 90% of the country. It was only serving 10%. So 90% of the country has never been participating. So I don't understand why we are blaming 90% of the country for not being, even civics that you talk about, that civics was being taught for 10% of the country. It was not 90%. What did our system of governance do? It destroyed the traditional societies. It marginalized, almost tried to eradicate the Sende, the Poro, all the different structures. Liberia has structures of governance in place. The place called Liberia before the settlers arrived. This place did not exist in a vacuum. There were sophisticated trading routes and how people governed themselves. Instead of finding a way, I think, to have merged and the good from both sides when the settlers came, our people felt that what the settlers brought was too superior to what they met. So we talk about education. Education is not the same as being literate. I will argue that up to 85% of the Liberian population is educated. The fact that they cannot read and write, especially English, does not mean they are not educated. But instead, we've talked the 10% and I can read and write and understand English. We put them in Monrovia and said they are the educated people, and we created an education system that only cater to their children, and left 80% of the country out because they could not read, write, and understand English. So I think these are fundamental questions we need to start asking when we talk about a constitution that does not even reflect the majority of our country and only 10% of our country. But as we push further, like Mansfield, like you said, like Dr. King said, we cannot fold our hands. But I think if we're calling for any reform in any shape or form, we need to rethink how come over 175 years, 80 to 85% of our population have been marginalized and disempowered from finding themselves actively participating in our systems of governance. And only 20 to 25% of an elite class, depending on what time of the day you were, has managed to manipulate it over and over and over for their own benefits and selfish gains that we've now seen. But I'll go to you, Mansfield, to give us your closing remarks, and then I can go to Dr. King.
Yeah, that's the sad part. I mean, you just really kind of, put it. You succinctly describe what has happened historically, and I think also it's sad because I was just commenting to a friend recently when this bicentennial program was developed. A very good friend, in high public office. I was just commenting to him that I think we're making a sad mistake if we don't recognize the role of the indigenous people in the founding of Liberia. I think what happened, maybe they will have a change of heart, or they will, really put the history in context. But they were trying to appease maybe the settler class, the history of the settler, coming to Liberia and, being ushered. But what happened to the chiefs, in Gaglo, and the chief King Peter, King John, and other people who were also part of the negotiation, who signed those treatises, although under duress. But at least
in fact, without them, there would be no Liberia that you call Liberia today.
Definitely, there won't be anything, because those were individual nations of their own. The Degola people on the St. Paul River, those people who traded with the Portuguese and other international merchant marines, real trading posts were established in those areas, going towards what they call the West Bank or the East Bank. So we have to look at our history and see where we lack, where we are founding to be wanting in our history. Because sometimes it depends on who writes the history. Sometimes the history, they are skewed towards certain class, certain people. So they're going back to our discussion today about leadership and power and all that, lofty ideas about how we move our country forward. Our history has to be rewritten to reflect the true history, what really happened. It has to be rewritten. Because over time,
just so you finish, so I can get Dr. King because he's on the phone, but go ahead, finish your closing.
Over time, we've seen this history being skewed. Our traditional indigenous people have been cast in a bad light, that they were heathen, they were recalcitrant when these negotiations were taking place. These were people who gave their land, to people who did not know. Why it's true that they had the same skin color, they did not know those people. Those people were strangers to them. They people might not have even come from what was Liberia, present-day Liberia. They might have come from other places. But because of the love they had for their fellow men, they embraced them. Now we have the celebration just on the Providence Island. There are other places, there are other leaders who negotiated.
Deep in Bandit land, deep in Vi land, deep in Gola land.
Gola land, Bassa land. There was a Bassa chief at Dukor, up the hill there, who was the first person they met. And the people were obliterated. Then you're telling us we have always had this decent history, our political culture are always beneficial to the majority of the people. No, it hasn't. So as we make this progress now in this modern age, with technology, everybody has a cell phone. Everybody is in tune with everybody is his own journalist now. Everybody is his own president in his own right. We will make progress as a people, as we advance in education, as we advance in literacy and all that. People learning how to read, how to view things. People learning about public policy. People can meet their legislators and make claims and bring their grievances. Those are political evolutionary processes that will happen over time.
Thank you, sir.
So I just want to stop on this note that we will make progress. And coming back to the president, we have the pastoral thing. For me, I'm not going to make judgment on anybody's, religious, feelings or how they try to serve their God, because it's a private matter. Whatever he does in his private time, it can, maybe it's a leadership style, by using that, singing, whatever thing that he knows best, But my interest is the future of the country. And if the future of the country has to be the future we want it to be for our children and grandchildren and posterity, I think we all owe it to ourselves and our country that we'll work every day and every night to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable first. Because the corruption you're talking about, there are corruption in some of the lowest places.
Agree.
Corruption in places you go fetch your phone. People want to take your SIM card and put 4 SIM card there. It's not corruption.
It is.
In places that you won't believe. And those things, those are micro corruption on a scale. And over time, it becomes a more macro corruption. So I want to thank you for the opportunity that you've accorded me. And I hope this discussion will take place at different levels, in different fora, and, for broader mass participation that will bring the kind of Liberia we all envision. So thank you very much for the time, Leo.
Thank you, Mr. Dopu. Mr. Dr. King, do we have you on the phone for your closing remarks? Dr.
Yeah.
I had another meeting. I said I had a stop at 7:20, but I had another meeting. I want to thank you, Dennis, and the rest of Leo and the rest of you, and even my partner on this call tonight. Right? I think this is a really great exchange, and it's good for us to be talking about some of these things. But let me say, and I want to run. No one here is personally criticizing anybody, but we need to be able to hold our leaders accountable, right? Some of the things we talk about, we're never going to move our country forward if we cannot hold our leaders accountable for things and question things and question them, right? That's what leadership is all about, and I agree that we all are leaders, right? From the market women to everybody, we all are leaders, but we got to hold our people accountable, right? And we need a radical new thinking on how we care for our country, how we change our country. And it means if we have to debate our leaders and ask them the tough questions and hard questions, then that so be it. I think that's what we need to do. But it's time that we expedite what is needed to be able to move development in our country and to improve the democratic process in our country, and to be able to enhance the social economic development of the people in our country. If we think that Liberia is the right trajectory, then that's okay. But I think you are in the minority. But I think you ask the majority of Liberia, we need to do more. Look at our neighboring countries, Guinea, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, all of these countries, right? They all are moving by leaps and bounds. So we need to be able to rethink these things. And it's good discussion for all of us to have. Not pointing any one person in any place. As I said, I'm not going to look at anybody religious background because it's not my take. What I'm saying is we have to be honest and hold our leaders accountable. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be on this call. I think it's great for us to continue to debate, not debate, but to bring up and talk the issue that's going to move our country forward. Thank you so much, Leo.
Thank you, Dr. King. Thank you, Mr. Mansfield Dopu here, who is one of the global affairs analysts for Focus on Liberia. We had a beautiful evening for Primetime Sunday. My name is Leo Nupolu Johnson, and I was sitting in for Mr. Dennis Jha this evening. Have yourself a wonderful week, everybody, and we will see you again next Sunday. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you.
We are Liberia.